Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you another really fascinating guest today who is helping to create a better tomorrow on many unique fronts. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Søren Østergaard, who is Vice President of Digital Health globally for the Novo Nordisk company, where he leads their company's initiatives in digital health, as well as leading the digital health solutions in development. Additionally, Søren is responsible for the commercial development of all digital health injection and other devices that they have in development, as well as Novo's partnering strategy, data integration, and commercial development strategies with their various partners in this area. Søren is a thought leader within the field. He has more than 16 years of experience at Novo Nordisk, and he has been able to unite and excite people towards ultimately how digital health ultimately adds value to pharma, the healthcare system, and ultimately people's lives. And he's very passionate about the interplay between pharma and tech, and ultimately how this, once again, is used to improve quality of life in people's lives. Before the current role, Søren was executive advisor to the executive vice president of commercial strategy and corporate affairs. He ran the executive vice president office for 2.5 years. And prior to that, in various positions, mostly within global marketing, which was centered around product management of medical devices and needles, as well as portfolio management. Søren also managed and developed 2 iterations of Novo Nordisk launch framework. He's led global launch prep for 20 plus products, and he's done portfolio analysis, valuation for various development assets, sat on project teams, leading commercial development work for both drug and devices. Søren has both a master's of science in management, innovation, business development, and a bachelor's in computer science and business admin from Copenhagen Business School. We're lucky to have him with us today. Søren Østergaard, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us.
Absolutely, more than happy to.
It's great having you. I would like to start out, as we typically do, by handing you the floor for a little bit to talk just a little bit more about your background. I noticed sort of really early in your career, you started off in information sciences. Talk a little bit about how you got interested, not just in IT, but also in the pharma and healthcare space, and ultimately a little that early career journey. I think that are great things to get going.
Yeah, I think so. Information sciences and computer sciences, I think that's been brought in at a very early age. So got my first computer in the 80s, and it kind of just stuck, and then it's been developing in that direction. And then I just got a natural interest in computer sciences and programming and the likes, and that kind of in an unplanned way, I think, kind of got me into computer science, the field of computer science, and then by chance, after my bachelor's, I got onto a master's degree that had a special focus on pharma. Wasn't too focused on pharma at the time, but the more I learned, right, the purpose, the why, the reason the people work in pharma is a value. It's one that really resonates, because you want to help people, and based on my knowledge of the computer science, I at that stage thought we must be able to merge these some of these fields, and pharma will be able to benefit. And that kind of led me to on a path where I joined Novo Nordisk and have been there. I mean, been really happy about it. I've stayed on for close to 17 years soon, right? And that I've always tried to, and in many times during my career, have been lucky enough to work in kind of the intersection between medical device, IT, and commercial model of pharma. And found that to be interesting. And as I think as we're seeing as this field, let's call it the digital health field, or digital medicine, or digital therapeutics, or whatever we call it, with whatever lens we look at it from, then that's really starting to converge to a higher degree. Over the last couple of years, then I've spent my time building the organization Novo Nordisk that is able to deliver software as a medical device, regulated products that accompany our medicines, and that's probably the most exciting thing I've done throughout my career, and I think this field is just getting started, to be honest.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. And a couple of weeks ago, Mads Thompson joined us, sort of giving us an overarching view of innovation at Novo. Reading a little bit about your organization, the Digital Health Organization, a rather broad purview in the sense the materials mentioned digital health, and as you were saying, digital therapeutics as well. So here we get into sort of the integrated digital with the devices, and then also, of course, patient support. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the background of the Digital Health Organization, how it was formed, sort of the initial ideas for how this was going to be set up, sort of in the overall sort of innovation ecosystem at Novo.
Yeah, so I've been in Novo Nordisk for 17 years, right? And to my knowledge, then we've had kind of 3 eras of digital health. They've been called different things throughout, right? So back in the early 2000s, we had an initiative. I wasn't part of it. Then in the late 2000s, then we had another initiative called Treatment Insights at the time, right? Which was essentially what we would call digital health today. The timing wasn't right, the infrastructure wasn't right, the external environment with cloud computing, with pervasiveness of devices being online and being able to exchange data freely, etc. This wasn't present, so we ended up closing the initiative. And the current iteration that we're on now, that started out in 2015 by our EVP at the time, Jacob Ries. He's now the CEO of a company called Falk. But he gave the task to some clever people to say, we need to figure out how we can utilize regulated digital products so that people can get the maximum therapeutic benefit of our medicines, because that's not happening to a sufficient degree currently. And that's a shame, right? When you spend 10, 20 years developing innovative medicines, then if people, they struggle to use them in the most appropriate way to get the full benefit, then that's just bad news for us as a company. It's bad news for society, and it's certainly bad news for patients. So I think we were a little bit at the time, we were a little bit you could say naive on what journey we were embarking on. I think we were thinking this was how difficult can it be to make an app to help. And I think as we've matured, as regulators have matured, as the whole industry have matured, we see that when we make regulated apps that interact with the way people use medicine and optimize the way you use medicines, we have to be really careful in how that is designed to avoid any patient safety related instances or issues or situations. And therefore you could say the whole digital health organization Novo Nordisk has grown. So I think we found out that we were very immature at the time in 2015 in our infrastructure to be able to make solutions in this space. So we had no QMS system, right? So we had no QMS that could facilitate that we could stay compliant with emerging regulation. We had very limited experience in developing medical apps under design control. Luckily, you could say, I think for Novo Nordisk, is that we have a long heritage of making medical devices via our device development organization, because we make injection devices in-house. And therefore, I think we had an advantage to compare to many other mid-sized or large pharma in the ability to work under design control for medical devices. And there's a lot of similarity between developing medical devices regulatorily and software as a medical device. It's not the same, but the capabilities that you need are to a large extent overlapping. So we started out creating that organization, tried to define the problem that we wanted to solve, because we knew, however, that that the journey we were on, we needed to solve a real unmet medical need if we were to continue, and this doesn't become like the e-business of 2000s, right, where everybody and their mother had to have an e-business, franchise in the company. So what we defined very clearly was that the problem we wished to solve was optimizing the use of our medicines, and we identified that in order to do that, we needed to have medical devices that could collect accurate data on the how people they used our medicines. So we made so we've developed smart insulin devices that could capture the dose, the timing of the dose, and which drug is being injected, and then start that's kind of the base for the ecosystem that's being created, which then we've made a lot of partnerships with leading medtech companies like Abbott and Gluco, Medtronic, Roche, MySugar, and Dexcom, and a number of others. And in order to ensure that the data can be correlated with other relevant data sets to provide insights that become actionable and can be used in clinical practice. So that's how we started. I think we did a pilot back in Sweden back in 2017, 18, 19 timeframe, where we had our medical device launched. We had integration with Gluco's diaset system in Sweden, and then we distributed a number of devices and collected the data, ensured appropriate consents and all those things, and then tried to look at when you have accurate information about how medicine is being used, what's the impact of that in the conversation that's happening between physician and patient. And we've since then made a number of publications. There's a number of abstracts and publications on kind of the results and the learnings we had from doing that. And to our surprise, I would say, we saw that there was a really significant and clinically meaningful impact on people's outcomes when such data is available to facilitate this conversation between physicians and patients. And not only that, we also saw that it can lead potentially to cost savings, at least in a Swedish context. That's what it looks like. That the healthcare system will save around is it 11,000 euros per patient over the lifetime of a patient, based on the results that can be generated over at least the period that we studied, if that's kind of continues on. So I think that's the journey we've been on. So obviously when we did this pilot, everything was held together by duct tape, basically, right? And when we did consent forms, it was still done on paper because we didn't have the infrastructure to do so. So but we were super encouraged by the fact that we have identified a problem, that people are not using our medicines optimally. We've identified tools that can help them use them increasingly more optimally. And then we said, okay, so then we need to build the infrastructure to be able to scale this and bring this to many more countries, many more patients. and then we started building a lot of the infrastructure, which of course expanded the role and the in the organization to deliver such things. So we had to build a data infrastructure. We had to build build the ability to do compliant data pipelines with our partners to exchange data in a way that is compliant with GDPR and other stuff. We had to, of course, work with our partners to get them to utilize the data and be able to extract the data from the smart insulin pens into their systems and correlate it with primarily the blood glucose data coming from either BGMs or CGMs. And then of course that's been ongoing since then to build this infrastructure to ultimately be able to support as many of the I think it's currently around 30 million people that are using Novo Nordisk insulins daily, and supporting them in getting the most out of the medicines that they have been put on to manage their disease. So that's kind of the first use case of smart insulin pens, bringing data, accurate, reliable, credible, complete data into clinical practice to help everyone have better conversations and make better decisions.
Excellent.
So that's the journey we've been on.
And as you've developed this amazing set of systems, this infrastructure, as you're saying, talk a little bit about how, because you have both internal and external innovation initiatives. We say internal for the time being. Obviously, top of mind, right? When one says Novo, one immediately thinks diabetes and I guess more recently diobesity. But you're involved in much more. You're a hemophilia company. You're a women's health company. You're involved in growth hormone products and so forth. Talk about a little bit about whether it's the wearables, the adherence, compliance tools, and so forth. How does your team go about targeting the development of the new digital solutions? Do you get your sort of marching orders from the various product teams? How does everything work now that you have the infrastructure set up? If I come along, I'm the project manager on the hemophilia project, I got this need, I come to you and X happens.
Yeah, I think the way we've so I think it's fair to say that this is still developing. We're finding our way of how to navigate this. But I'll give a couple of examples of how we go about this. So ultimately, the underlying unmet need that people are not utilizing medicines to a sufficiently high degree in chronic care is something that we have found no matter where we look, right? So whether we're looking at insulin, whether we're looking at GLP-1, growth disorders, hemophilia, obesity. So when people are taking these medications chronically, then it's difficult for them to comply day in, day out, 24 hours a day with no breaks with any regimen. Yeah. And therefore, we have also been able to measure kind of the inefficiency in use of all those medicines, right? So the underlying unmet need is kind of what's guiding us. We are not currently exploring what I would call like digital modes of action that are separate from the mode of action of the medicine. So our focus is to ensure that the medicines, the mode of action inherent in the molecule gets utilized optimally, right? And because we believe that the opportunity for society for more health here is very big. And I think WHO made a report back in 2003 to the same nature, that the biggest opportunity is to use medicines optimally, right? And that's what we're targeting. So when we go about what should a new product be, then we look at we start with the patient. We look at the patient journey in the given field. We would typically we have some in-house anthropologists, right, who would do some field work to follow patients, to talk to patients, to talk to caregivers and other relevant parties to identify what they are struggling with on a daily basis. Because what we found is that the difference between, let's say, I'll just use an example. So if you have a type 2 patient, so a person with type 2 diabetes who's on a basal only therapy, then based on a lot of studies like phase 3 and phase 4 studies, then let's say that about half of those on any modern basal from Novo or from anywhere will get in good glycemic control if in a clinical study, right, in a randomized controlled clinical study. But the difference when they use them in the real world, like the world we live in, is that only, instead of it being half of patients, half of people that are on this that getting good control, then it's like 10 to 20%, right? That's our real world data studies suggest, right, that there's a really big difference here. So the gap between what the drug can do under randomized controlled clinical trial circumstances and in the real world, that's what we're looking at. What are the reasons that people are not realizing this? And that has a lot to do with things that are not necessarily related to the medicine itself. It's simply because it's super overwhelming to live with chronic disease and having to manage it day in, day out. And in the case of insulin, there's also the risk that, if you take too much, that could potentially be dangerous. If you take too little, that could also be dangerous on the longer term. So people are struggling with this. So we need to follow them. What is it that people are struggling with, right? And in the case of being on a basal insulin, it could relate to them being scared for a number of different reasons of titrating the self or escalating the dose to the appropriate dose to manage their disease, right? And they either feel scared of whether they're calculating the dose correctly, right? And they know that taking too much is dangerous. It could also be that that they simply don't know, so they would need some guidance in how to do that, because they become unsure about how they should act. But it could also be that they're just overwhelmed by all of the stuff being delivered, or that they are spending their time with their family and then they're just managing their disease. They're not living to manage they're living to be with their disease. They're managing their disease. They can live their life, right? And we need to design products that actually help them do that, right? And that's what we're focusing on, and doing anthropological work to understand this deeply before you go in and design solutions. We found is very effective also to mobilize internal support, because sometimes when we sit in big pharma companies, we are not close enough to the people that are actually using our medicines. Because a lot of pharma companies, including Novo Nordisk, primary customers are the physicians, to convince the physicians to make make sure that they have all the data to make the right decisions on behalf of the patients. But when we are designing digital solutions that may be used directly by patients, then we need to make sure that we are also addressing the needs that these patients are struggling with when utilizing our or when dealing with our medicines. So the anthropological work typically kind of results in us creating patient journeys with intervention points along their journey, rooted in having studied and followed them on what they struggle with on a daily basis. By doing so, then we identify what unmet needs there are. We work with the product teams from the brands or from the molecules to figure out which needs are the ones that the digital solutions should address. And then we put a team together with kind of a cross-functional, we call them kind of system teams, or that have kind of cross-functional representation from medical, from marketing, from technical people and others, and put them together to work on solving that specific problem. But I think realizing, going down this, right, and also to anyone who's listening, right, that getting this right, that's a difficult task, because the digital health or digital solutions, like the ones I've mentioned, they cut kind of the value chain a little bit differently than the way pharma companies are typically structured. Yep. So right now, it's pretty clear when we develop a new molecule, we put a global project team in place, and they are responsible for anything that has to do with that molecule. Yep. When you then make a digital solution, that digital solution, let's say a dose guidance solution or a titration solution, may be applicable or may kind of cut across both one molecule, another molecule, and therefore, there could be there could be some issues that arise relating to who's responsible and who's accountable here, and that's kind of that's something we that we encounter as we go along, and it usually results in some really good discussions that makes the products under development stronger, but we're just kind of still in the process of figuring out how to structure this in the most optimal way. I think we're getting there, but I think that's been a lot of learnings along the way here.
Absolutely. As you you're going through this learning process, you gave a very sort of elegant overview of how it all works internally. But like all pharma companies, and like Novo has with their external innovation initiatives and partnering, your digital health also is part of this. I was wondering if you could, because there was a few sort of publicly disclosed relationships that your organization has. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about each of these, because I think they once again they show sort of the elegance of some of what you're working on there. And the first of these that I came across in the news was this relationship between Novo and a company called BioCore, which was working sort of on this continuum, as you were saying before. We have the device, the smart pen, which can not only give the insulin, but record sort of the scheduling, and then it also can relay that to the primary healthcare physician. Talk a little bit about this relationship.
So maybe I'll just start, because I remember your initial question as well, so that I didn't answer completely right. But I think the way we have structured our ability to work in this field is we will have internal development, so internal development efforts where we develop it end to end, right? Yep. Then we also have the ability to work with external partners where we do the product specification, but we hire in external companies to do the development, and then we do the validation, right? And then we also have what we call software as medical device as a service, right? So our QMS can kind of cater to working in various different ways, right? And then we also have kind of your traditional, you could say, hands-off commercial collaborations. I would, for lack of a better word, that we have. So the BioCore collaboration is a collaboration where our aim is to ensure that everyone who uses Novo Nordisk medicine, and with the BioCore announced thing, it's within insulin, that they have the most options to record this data and share it with whomever that they feel that this data is relevant to be shared with. So what we have internal development efforts. We have launched NoPen 6, NoPen Echo Plus, which is a fully integrated injection device for people using Novo Nordisk insulins, and we are rolling that out kind of worldwide. But there will also be people that would need other options, and I think we would like to make sure that people have more options, so that more people will get that. And the BioCore collaboration is one such collaboration where we're trying to make this available for more people. So the collaboration is that BioCore develops this, and we will then buy that from BioCore and help commercialize that in a number of markets. We have some agreements that we will, of course, facilitate that there will be a data sharing and an appropriate consent management and other things for any partners that, for example, go to developer.novonordisk.com and sign up to to our developer portal, so that they can work with the data, build that data into their solutions, and make their solutions more valuable for the users of those solutions. So I think we're super, you could say, excited about our collaboration with Biocorp on their, their attachment device. So whereas NoPen 6, NoPen Echo Plus is kind of a durable device where you put in cartridges, then the Biocorp solution is kind of an auxiliary device or attachment device that you put on pre-filled pens. And there's a lot of people out there that have a preference for using pre-filled pens, so that's one option. And then we have we will see more options kind of being developed as well. So that's I think it's super exciting, and the guys in France and Biocorp, they're doing a hell of a job, getting these developed and hopefully soon into the hands of patients. We're super excited about it.
Excellent. Yeah. Sort of another one that's equally fascinating. Novo recently made financial participation in a company called Verana Health. It's interesting because you co-invested with J&J and Merck and some other big pharma players in this one, and here much more sort of all-encompassing sort of data management in terms of 20,000 healthcare providers, 500 million point-of-care health encounters. The electronic health record system, is obviously so important, and it's been mentioned as being so important over the years, but always very hard to wrap your hands around via sort of traditional technologies. Talk a little bit about what you're doing with health system records and this related deal, if you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I think digitalization is a bigger topic than digital health only.
Yep.
So the Verana Health is actually something that's handled elsewhere in the organization, and as such, then my organization is not directly involved. But I think the important message here is that we will see digitalization, and we will see Novo Nordisk in a number of different initiatives. There's also other initiatives that are super exciting, I think, like the Beamer initiative, that is also something that's handled elsewhere than mine. Okay. And I think this speaks to the fact that we as a company are fully on board on this digital transformation of pharma, and we need to make a lot of different trials and errors and make different collaborations and activate a larger part of the organization in seeing and working with the opportunities that are presented. The Verana initiative, there's a whole host of other initiatives as well that we as a company are embarking on. So I can't speak specifically to the Verana one, but I can say that the organization as a whole are exploring that and many other initiatives.
Excellent. Yeah, I figured I'd highlight it anyway, just to show how the digitalization is working its way through a major company in the space like Novo. When I talked, as I said, with Dr. Thompson a few weeks ago, he brought up this this interesting concept. He actually wrote about it about 15 years ago, but this principle of the triple bottom line, and of course, companies like Novo. You're a pharma company, you got to make money, but at the same time, there's social and environmental implications of everything we do. Digital health potentially playing a very important role here, and in the Novo Digital Health materials, it mentions once again this triple bottom line. Can we use these digital tools for social purposes in terms of low income areas where digital technology has a benefit? Of course, environmental uses in the sense that we don't have to do X, Y, and Z, and as opposed to using the digital tools. Talk a little bit about sort of where you see sort of digital health going in terms of impacting the triple bottom line of organizations.
Yeah, so I think that's the beauty here, right? Because the scalability of these digital solutions are bar none, right? So if you've made it, if it works, then the cost of scaling that both to premium segments and lower income segments is it's not costless, but it has an attractive kind of scalability profile. And I think the beauty of some of these digital solutions is that we make them available for all of the people that are that are using our medicines. Because I think our objective here is that when physicians or patients have entrusted themselves by using Novo Nordisk medicines, then they should get as much of the benefit as possible. So what we've made sure is that the solutions we develop are made available broadly, and we aim for making them available for as many of our products as possible. And I'll give you an example. So when we launched Novo Pen 6, that works with any Novo Nordisk insulin launched that is available in pen-filled cartridges. That includes, in some markets, human insulins that was launched back in the 80s. That you can still use that, you can still get the benefit, and you can still have these more productive conversations with your physician. And we are in the process of launching Novo Pen 6, Novo Pen Echo Plus, all over the world. Both trying to get them reimbursed so that they are cost-free to patients, but also otherwise making them available for very you could say in our view low cost to patients. I'll give an example. So in Denmark, where we have launched Novo Pen 6, a device that works for 5 years, that can at the present time be acquired at an online pharmacy for 399 Danish kroner, which is approximately 40-50 euros or $40-50, let's say $50. It works for 5 years, so that's $10 a year. I think that there's a lot of people that even if it was not reimbursed, that would be able to benefit from and have the means to benefit from the cost available here. So I think it's imperative that digital health reaches as many people as possible. That's also why we at least are not currently in the process of securing a premium and separate price for the digital solutions in addition to the medicines, because I think our aim is that society needs and are paying for medicines, premium and innovative medicines, and I think we have an obligation to ensure that society also gets the benefits of those medicines that they are paying for. So that's definitely the aim. What I will also say, and what we are super encouraged, is that I think you have to look at the full stakeholder landscape here of who benefits. So obviously, Novo Nordisk will benefit from the increased use of digital solutions, because if people optimize the use of medicines, they will most likely use slightly more of the medicine to address the inefficient use that's currently ongoing. People would typically underdose or compared to what their actual need was, and we get paid currently by the milligram or by the unit of product, and therefore there's a benefit to Novo Nordisk. But in order for this to be relevant, right, then society and patients also need to benefit. And what our initial data from the Swedish pilot suggests is that people are getting clinically meaningful reductions in their HbA1c from the use of these solutions, so they benefit. Doctors can use their time more productively because they have this data available. So it's not that doctors get more time, right? They don't get less time, but having this available actually makes the conversation focus more on the treatment part than the diagnosis part. In the initial, let's say you have between 5 and 12 minutes per normal interaction with the patient, then you want to spend the most of that time treating the patient instead of diagnosing what's wrong. And here the tool can help shift that towards more treatment and less diagnosis as part of that call. And then you could say, then, as I mentioned earlier in the call here, then because of these benefits, despite people using slightly more insulin, despite people having to potentially pay a premium, a small premium, but a premium for the actual device, then society nets out 11,000 euros, at least in the Swedish context, from people that are utilizing these solutions. So, so when you look at the stakeholder landscape, right, you have to, for digital health or for anything really to make sense in the healthcare system, you have to everybody has to win here, and patients win, physicians win, society and payers, they win, and we do it on sustainable terms, you know, as a for-profit company. But yeah, but that makes sense when everybody else in the cascade also win. So that's what we aim, and if we don't succeed with that, then we are not relevant in my mind, and then we have to figure out doing something else. But I trust and I'm super excited about us being on this path and encouraged by the emerging evidence that in this field.
And Søren, you clearly are passionate about digital tech and digital health. You've built this amazing infrastructure, and you've stayed with it over these years as it's gone through these various iterations. What else gets you excited? I mean, obviously, we're in a 2022 world of virtual reality, of extended reality, of meta and metaverse. Where do you think this is all going? Obviously, a little science fiction here, but where is digital tech evolving with some of these new tools?
Yeah, but I'm a tech realist rather than a tech optimist, right? Okay. So when I hear from the nerd in me, right, the guy who grew up, right, gets super excited about the augmented reality solutions and all that. So, but what really gets me excited is when I look at what is it that will drive the next, you could say, frontier, not on the molecular side, but on kind of the tech side, on more health for society. And I think here, what gets me really excited is kind of the ability soon for us to make advanced algorithms that can optimize treatment, either fighting clinical kind of inertia by people not being on the right move to the right medication at the right time. So I'll give you an example. So in Denmark, we have pretty good kind of registries going back years on, so we have pretty good data on people, and there, despite the treatment guidelines in the country stating that when you have certain comorbidities, then you should be put on cardioprotective therapy, right? And like GLP-1s or SGLT2s, or there's a couple of there's a variety of various drugs that you can be prescribed. Then only, I think it's I'll get you the reference if needed, right? But it's like, let's say it's 10% of the people that, based on the data, should be moved to cardioprotective therapy are put on cardioprotective therapy, right? So there's a clinical inertia that's not happening. And I think we can make algorithms, and because we have access to some of the data, or society has access to some of this data, then we can more effectively use a lot of the assets that have been developed, like all the molecules that are being introduced, the innovative medicines that are being used, to a much higher degree and much more efficiently for society, right? So algorithms, validated algorithms with that gets me excited, right? When those algorithms start to utilize machine learning or neural nets or other things, right? We're not there yet, right? Because the regulatory environment is evolving, so we will get there soon. But when we start to see some of these, that's when we will see a huge transformation on the health at the societal level, I believe, and that gets me super excited, because I think when I look into chronic care, I see that there's so much opportunity for optimization, right? I think it will take much longer, but the music industry moving from selling CDs, where if you remember that, right, where there was one good song, right? That one good Celine Dion song that you wanted to listen to, but you had to buy like 14 other songs that it seemed like they were just tagged on, right? And then to move into this where you are paying only for what's valuable to you. And I think this is the this inefficiency, right, that was in the music industry before, where you're buying like a full CD for one song. That's also in our space, and and these algorithms, they have the potential to remedy that. And as regulators become more able to give kind of good advice and set the right frames to ensure patient safety when we do those things, then that I think is extremely exciting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hey, I purchased a lot of CDs with 14 band songs on them, but that's a whole other story. Now you're dating me. So while I have you, obviously, you've been quite busy, both the internal and the external innovation, and that's going to keep going. Where can we look for you in 2022, follow you? Are you going to be at conferences, talks you're going to be giving in the digital health front? Any other hot topics that you want to talk about for 2022, please, give you the floor.
So I really encourage people to go follow me on LinkedIn. It's where I put most of my information. I write I write articles when there's something I find interesting. When I find cool tidbits of data related to primarily digital health, but I could also be COVID related or other topics. So it's at LinkedIn /in/Søren. You can find me there for sure. And I think I'll be out there talking a lot about creating the factual data that will form the basis of the transformation I just talked about, because algorithms are only as good as the data that you can provide. And as we are developing that with Biocorp and internally, right? So accurate data on how people use medication, then and correlate that with a lot of other things, then that's where that I will be speaking a lot about. And then I will also be speaking a lot on our initial, you could say, venture into these algorithms that can give dose guidance to people using our medicines, to ensure that we can provide them automatic dose guidance via an app that has been prescribed by a physician. And I'll also be talking a lot about that this year. So if those are interesting things for you, then do hit me up. And otherwise, contact us at developer.novonordisk.com if any listeners have solutions that they believe could benefit from knowing more about how people use medications.
Outstanding. We will put those links to Søren's bio, as well as the Novo Nordisk digital health connections in the show bio as well. Søren, it's great stuff. I really rooting you and your team on as you continue to develop this new vision for digital health and leading the development of these solutions. For everybody that's going to be listening to this episode of the show across the podcast networks or watching on the YouTube channel, you've been listening to Søren Østergaard, Vice President, Digital Health Global for Novo Nordisk. Søren, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while. Obviously, thank you for everything you're doing there. And as we like to say on this show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through what you're doing. It's a really exciting story.
Thanks for spreading the word. I appreciate it. And everyone, just keep advancing that. It'll be beneficial for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Be well.